Theresa May warns Britain must change after the quiet revolution of the Brexit vote. She told the Tory conference they would restore fairness and help working people, and Labour was now the nasty party.
Also tonight, facing jail, the undercover journalist convicted over a sting on pop star Theresa.
18 years on, justice for the family of a murdered waiter let down by institutional racism.
And the remarkable runner who's completed 401 marathons in 401 days.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Ranveer Singh.
Good evening. It was a clear pitch for the centre ground of politics. Theresa May designed her party conference speech to appeal to both the left and the right, saying the Tories were the true party of the workers, whilst talking tough on immigration.
She also took aim at Labour, calling it the nasty party, and said the country must be prepared to change after Brexit. But while her speech set a tone, it was light on actual policy. Our political editor Robert Peston was watching.
A new Tory leader and Prime Minister just starting up.
I want to set our party and our country on the path towards the new centre ground of British politics.
No appearance by May would be complete without a statement about what that Brexit vote actually means.
Change has got to come too, because of the quiet revolution that took place in our country just 3 months ago. A revolution in which millions of our fellow citizens stood up and said they were not prepared to be ignored anymore.
And then, the very heart of our argument.
Because it wasn't the wealthy who made the biggest sacrifices after the financial crisis, but ordinary working-class families. And if you're one of those people who lost their job, who stayed in work but on reduced hours, or, and I know a lot of people don't like to admit this, someone who finds themselves out of work or on lower wages because of low-skilled immigration, life simply doesn't seem fair.
In her sights, the rich and powerful who shirk their responsibilities.
So if you're an international company that treats tax laws as an optional extra, a director who takes out massive dividends while knowing that the company pension is about to go bust, I'm putting you on warning. This can't go on anymore.
And then a promise to give help to a group who don't normally look to the Tories.
And it's what I'm in this for, to put the power of government squarely at the service of ordinary working-class people.
So, parking her tanks on Labour's lawn.
Fighting among themselves, tolerating anti-Semitism and supporting voices of hate. You know what some people call them? The nasty party.
Of course, it was May who first branded her own party as nasty. This speech was more about vision than specific policies, but she did stand by her plan to create new grammar schools, even though some argue this will hurt those on low incomes she's promising to help.
The central tenet of my belief is that there is more to life than individualism and self-interest.
Many see Theresa May as the new Margaret Thatcher. She explicitly rejected that characterisation of herself, saying she was against individualism and self-interest. She wants the Tory government to stand up for, in her words, the ordinary working class. This is a shift of the Tory party to the left.
Mr. Blue Sky. Two meanings of that. Sunny days or risky, untested thinking. We'll know soon enough which she represents.
And Robert has made a speedy return to Downing Street, where the Prime Minister also is tonight. And Robert, was this speech another sign of the change of direction after David Cameron?
Very much so. I mean, just over 80 days ago, she dumped a bunch of David Cameron's ministers when she formed her cabinet, and today she's dumped a bunch of his important policies. This was very much, in an economic sense, a shift to the left, more investment, a less rigorous control of borrowing, much more interference in the affairs of companies, especially to stop company bosses lining their pockets at the expense of workers. But when it comes to law and order and immigration, very much a shift to the right. Much more control on the ability of companies to hire who they like, particularly from outside the EU. That's very controversial. Now, Theresa May says this very much reflects her inner beliefs, her principles. Quite interesting, though, that much of this will appeal to both UKIP in turmoil and Labour, where many of its members don't like the Corbyn approach. I would just say one thing, lots of ideas here, not a lot of detail about what Mayism will actually mean in practice to you and me.
All right, thanks very much indeed.
The undercover reporter known as the Fake Sheikh was found guilty today of tampering with evidence during the collapsed drug trial of singer Theresa.
Mazher Mahmood's tabloid expose had accused her of offering to supply cocaine, but he changed witness statements when it came to court, as Sejal Courier now reports.
His journalism was lauded by the News of the World and The Sun on Sunday for exposing the secrets of the rich and famous. Royals, celebrities and sports stars were all caught in his net.
Mazher Mahmood, why did you tamper with the evidence, Mazher Mahmood?
Say sorry, Mazher.
Are you sorry?
But today the man who fiercely guards his identity left court in disgrace, where Mazher Mahmood was unmasked as a liar and found guilty of misleading a court over one of his undercover stings. And his ex-boss told me on this occasion he crossed a line.
I've been amazed that it's taken so long to bring him to book. He sailed so close to the wind on so many occasions, and he seems to have really skated on thin ice and got away with it.
He'd accused the former X-Factor judge Theresa May of setting up a drugs deal, which she always denied. It ended with this front-page headline. But today Mahmood was convicted of plotting to change a police statement to make her look guilty. Theresa's drugs trial collapsed 2 years ago when she gave this statement.
This whole case was a horrific and disgusting entrapment by Mazher Mahmood and the Sun on Sunday newspaper.
Former London's burning star John Alford was targeted by Mahmood in a separate sting. He is now one of 27 people looking to either clear their names or seek compensation.
People who've had their lives ruined, they can have 20 years or more of lost income, lost houses, compensating them for having to have spent time in prison. I mean, you are talking a very serious amount of money.
Mahmood's stings led to dozens of people being jailed. Now he may see one of his own stings land him behind bars. Sejal Courier, ITV News.
After an 18-year fight for justice, the family of an Indian waiter who was stabbed to death in Lanarkshire finally saw a man convicted of his murder today.
2 previous trials failed to secure a conviction, leading to allegations of institutional racism. But Ronnie Coulter, who was cleared in 1999, was today found guilty at his retrial. Our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith has this.
Surjit Tucker was almost at the gate of his girlfriend's house when he was attacked by a gang and stabbed to death. It's taken 3 trials and 2 independent inquiries, but today, after almost 2 decades, Ronnie Coulter became the first person to be convicted for the murder. This is a moment Mr. Tucker's family has waited so long and campaigned so hard to see.
Whilst the dead cannot cry out for justice, it is the duty of the living to do so for them. The Tucker family have done just that and have also placed victims' rights at the heart of a modern criminal justice system, which will be their legacy for generations to come.
This conviction was only possible because a change in the law allowed a retrial. The Tuckers previously saw 3 men acquitted of murder and watched Ronnie Coulter walk free.
The real verdict is one of institutional racism. That's the real verdict. Institutional racism right at the heart of the police and the Crown Office in this country.
The Tucker family felt British justice was not for them. They couldn't even lay flowers at the murder scene without facing intimidation and racist abuse.
Can he speak English?
The Tucker family didn't feel able to return to that Lanarkshire estate until now.
How does it feel for you coming back here?
Very hard.
You've never given up fighting?
No. I would never have given up fighting. Because I want to show my brother face that I never sat back. Pity that 3 people were charged with my brother's murder. Only one's been sentenced. Other 2 are roaming on the streets, living with their families. There's nothing we can do. Story's finished. That's it.
The Choker family walked a familiar path out of this court today, but for the first time, they know what justice feels like. Peter Smith, ITV News, Glasgow.
The partner of former EastEnders actress Cyan Blake will spend the rest of his life in prison for killing her and her 2 children. Arthur Simpson Kent murdered 4-year-old Amon and 8-year-old Zacharian Cyan, who was terminally ill. He tried to cover up the crime by painting over bloodstains in the house and burying the bodies in the garden.
Nigel Farage is back in charge of UKIP tonight after the shock resignation last night of Diane James. She quit after just 18 days as leader. But Nigel Farage says he's back only on a temporary basis. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is at Westminster. And Carl, are we any clearer as to why Diane James resigned?
Well, I've been told that she never really wanted to be UKIP leader and had to be nagged into standing by Nigel Farage. And when she got the job, she found herself subjected to personal abuse in public and unable to carry reforms through that she thought the party needed because they were being blocked at a high level. Party officials deny that today. There was confusion today over who was the leader of UKIP because she hadn't actually filled in the forms properly. Turns out it was this man.
My intention is to stay as effectively the interim leader until we get into a new set of elections. We get this done and dusted, perhaps by the end of November. And no, I can confirm absolutely clearly that I will not be one of the candidates.
So there will be another leadership contest. Where would we be without one of those? And then the new leader has to sort out big structural and financial difficulties for UKIP, has to curb the party's prodigious appetite for bitter infighting, and of course has to convince the rest of us in a world where Britain is leaving the EU what the point of UKIP is at all.
All right, Carl, thank you very much indeed.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, recycling your money. 1 year on, we investigate where your 5p carrier bag charge actually goes.
And the real-life Forrest Gump completes his marathon challenge. Those stories and more right after the break.
Welcome back. As we have chronicled life in the besieged eastern half of Aleppo this week, it's easy to forget it was once a colourful, vibrant city. The daily bombardment from Syrian and Russian warplanes has now reduced its buildings to grey rubble and dust. Its streets, once full of life, are deserted.
As part of our coverage this week, we're monitoring the number of airstrikes and the people they kill. On Monday alone, there were 7 of them. 9 people died, only 1 could be considered a rebel fighter. Among those killed in the last few days, 2 young brothers, Hussein Mohammed and Mohammed Noor. Their mother and sister were killed a month ago. They will now be buried alongside them.
With Aleppo under siege, Emma Murphy reports on one district which in the space of a few years has been torn apart by war.
It's hard to believe that just 3 years ago this was Aleppo, a place where giddy children could gather for community parties, where the sound of song echoed in the streets and their bodies were unharmed. But what a change has been wrought. This was the same area in February, and the price its residents have paid for standing against the government is clear, as once self-sufficient families queue for food. Yet those challenges are nothing in comparison to the hell of the very same streets today, almost obliterated by relentless air attacks from the government they oppose and their Russian allies. They say it's an attempt to drive out terrorists. Others say what's happening here is a war crime. The children who once gathered in the street now huddle in broken homes. At 7, Sumi is so used to the attack she doesn't even look alarmed as the house is hit. What looks like snow is actually dust. 10-year-old Ibrahim's bandages are from an attack the day before which killed his brother and sister. And 1-year-old Maysan's stunned face is filthy with bomb residue. Morning light reveals the latest damage to their home. Sumi searches for possessions in the rubble as if seeking treasure. Her brother holds up what's left of the blades from the cluster bombs which fell on them. The strikes happen so often now, people barely even flinch. You can hear them as this woman speaks.
طلعوا هالمدنية هي نايمة بعز نومها بالفرش مو حرام هالأطفال هالحرم اللي عمال تترعب وتتقتل وين البشر وين الإسلام وين هي الطفلة إرهابية هي إرهابية عم بشار وروسيا وإيران وحزب الله إرهابية.
The children don't gather in the streets anymore because for the majority there's little left of the streets they once knew. Tonight the Syrian army has said it will reduce the strikes to allow those inside to leave. However, few will believe that safe passage is open to them. Emma Murphy, ITV News.
And with talks on Syria in the United States and in Berlin today, our Washington correspondent Robert Moore will be taking your questions on the diplomatic crisis live on Facebook at the end of the programme.
2 police officers in Brussels have been stabbed in what prosecutors say could be a terrorist attack. It's thought one of them was stabbed in the neck and the other in the stomach. The attacker has been named as a 43-year-old Belgian.
When the 5p charge for plastic bags was introduced in England a year ago today, the last part of Britain to bring it in fact, the government promised the proceeds would go to charity. But our findings show not all supermarkets are giving the same. Our consumer editor Chris Choi has been investigating.
A mountain of bags, but the 5p charges have shrunk it. Here, a drop of 130 million of them.
Every time we save 1,000 tonnes of plastic, we avoid emitting 1,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So we're saving energy, we're saving carbon emissions, and we're saving materials.
Government wanted those 5p charges on all these carrier bags to benefit charity. But our research shows some supermarkets are giving less than others.
The charges have certainly led to reduced use of the bags, a 71% drop in Wales and Northern Ireland, 80% in Scotland, 85% for England. For each 5p spent, 4p remains after VAT. Some supermarkets, including Asda and Morrison's, give it all to good causes. Tesco donates 3.6p because guidelines allow it to deduct reasonable expenses, and Sainsbury's gives around 1p because its bags cost more to make as they're no longer single-use. No supermarket is profiting. Government is, through VAT, estimated at £18 million a year in England alone. Tesco will donate £24 million. One recipient is this hospice in Loughborough.
If at the back of your mind you're thinking, oh, why pay 5p, then actually knowing that there's a local charity, it might be something that thinks, oh, 5p is worth spending.
The hospice is really important to help people get out the house and, like, socialising.
Disposable bags now creating long-lasting benefits. Chris Choi, ITV News.
And finally, running one marathon is hard enough, probably. So imagine completing 401 of them in as many days. That is a prospect, I guarantee you, beyond most of our capabilities.
But in Bristol this afternoon, 34-year-old Ben Smith managed to finish such a challenge. Richard Pallow joined Ben in Bristol for his final few miles.
After so long on the road, you'd forgive Ben Smith for being a touch tired. Not a bit of it. One last sprint across the line to end his feat of endurance.
Thank you!
Describe the feelings to finally finish.
I'm overwhelmed, honestly. I know I keep on using that word today, but look, you know, the crowds of people that have come out, the attention this project has got today, the fact that we've achieved our 4 objectives that we set out to do has just been, it's been mind-blowing.
Ben's journey began in Bristol in September last year. As the months passed, he crisscrossed the country, even doing a marathon on Christmas Day in Lincoln. In June, though, a back injury in Aberdeen saw him forced to stop. Ben's trainers were back on in Inverness 10 days later, since when he's done an extra 2.5 miles daily to make up the lost distance. And his final marathon, number 401, ends back where it all started. When Ben set off, David Cameron still had 10 months left as Prime Minister, and Leicester City had only just begun their title-winning season, since when he has run 10,500 miles. That's the equivalent of London to Sydney, while the weather has not always been quite this pleasant.
Day 152 in Leeds, and it's snowing!
He's burnt through 22 pairs of shoes, burnt off 22.5 million calories, and raised £250,000 for charity without one single blister.
No blisters, no missing toenails. Sorry, they're just a bit dirty.
And what's he doing tomorrow? Another half marathon. His body has to wind down. But first, a few celebrations tonight. Richard Pallo, ITV News, Bristol.
He deserves that. Yeah, that's it from us.
Raggy's here at 10, but from us, bye-bye.